annoy me. Sometimes I want a clear answer. And rather than him giving me a clear answer, he sends me and sets me up in a place. He places me and drops me off in a situation. He propositions me in a predicament. And when I thought that I had gone through the worst of it, I've come to discover that the next step in the journey seemingly and apparently is worse than the stage. Have you ever wondered, after you testified, after you declare and position that this next stage of my development was going to be better than the stage that I left, that all of a sudden when morning comes and you get the newspaper of the day, the theme and the line there has your name written on it, and it's not good news, but it's bad news. Well, you feel as though you've been walking down that path or sitting in that seat or driving in that car. I need to tell you that in the depth of my spirit, I feel that there is a person that can empathize with you tonight. There's a man by the name of Naaman. But Naaman is a man who is more than just a man. He is the captain of the host. He is the general of the Armenian army. It is by him that Syria was not defeated. And the text says in 2nd chapter of Kings, chapter number 5 and verse number 1, it says that he was honorable. It tells us about who he was and what he did. But the text goes on to say, it puts a comma and a conjunction. It says, but he was a leper. And I need to declare to you, Pastor Burrell, that sometimes when we are on the road headed to our next stage of development, the thing that we have to get over is public praises while we deal with private pains. Because what people understand about Naaman is that Naaman had overcome his leprosy in the public, but there was still an internal struggle that he was dealing with privately. And while folk were adoring him and telling about what he had done, they did not see the fact that when he went home and closed the door and pulled down the shade, that he was crying and groaning in his spirit. They only saw him for his strength and for his valor, but his wife, and when he looked in the mirror and saw the man staring back at him, all he saw was a leper. Have you ever been in a place in your life that you didn't see what everybody else saw? You didn't feel what everybody else felt. You didn't understand what everybody else understood. And you were trying to figure it out within yourself. Why in the world are they shouting when inside of me I'm about to lose it all? Because the truth was, although they praised him, he still had something that irked him. He was still a leper. He was still a leper, but there's something in the text that shows us on tonight that you can be dealing with something, and the thing that should disconnect you with your purpose, God has a way of allowing people to surpass the thing that should disconnect them with their promise. Why? Because the fact is, he was a leper. He should have been on the outside of the city.
Come on now.
He wasn't supposed to be where he was because his leprosy suggested that he would pollute those that were around him. So the first question that I have to raise, how in the world did this leopard boy go from being a leopard to being a general? There's somebody that I'm talking to on tonight that your circumstance and your situation was supposed to prevent you from stepping into your destiny, but God had a way of taking the thing that was supposed to disconnect you with your destiny and tell other folk around you that when they look at you and they see your blemishes, but God got a way of veiling up your blemishes, and when they look at you they can't even see the stars anymore. The fact is that I'm not hurt. It's not that I'm all together. It's not that my life is A-okay. It's just that God has failed me. And so when they look at me, they don't see my pain. When they look at me, they don't see my scars. When they look at me, they don't see my mourning. When they look at me, they don't see my hurt. They can see that I'm covered. Sometimes God got a way of covering you. And folk that were supposed to hate you will find themselves following behind you. And you wonder to yourself, why in the world are they following behind me? As as messed up as I am, because God got a way of using messed up folk to do an extraordinary job. I think it happened right there quick, because I know in myself that God uses folk with proclivities and dealt with life's vicissitudes to do great jobs. Why? Because I looked at myself this morning. I looked at myself, and I had to assess and evaluate and put some pieces together and realize that I have some stuff that if folk knew about, they wouldn't follow me. I have some stuff that if they heard about, they wouldn't depend on me the way that they do. But God got a way of failing. The Bible says, the text says, follow me. The text says that one day they went into Israel, one of the crusades, and they pulled out this young girl that the Bible finds no need to tag her with a name, and she becomes the servant to his nameless wife, Mrs. Naaman, and she hears him weeping in the midnight hour, and she runs and says, Sister Naaman, I need to tell you something. I've seen what the soldiers have not seen. Come on now. While he's walking around in front of the troops, and his head is erect and his shoulders are standing broad, while he's standing with all the strength and with all the power. But I've heard him in the evening. I've seen him when he had to take out his handkerchief and he had to wipe his tears away. I know that there's something that's about to make him crack. But guess what? God sent me to tell you that there's somebody in Samaria. Say, hold on, that's why you have to be careful. And that's why you have to be conscious of the folk that God sent in your life and you don't even know why. Because God will send nameless folk that seem to have no power and have no position. And those will be the very people that will serve as the catalyst to your deliverance. They don't have to have a title. They don't have to have a position. They don't have to have a significant role. The only thing is they have to have a place in your life. Before you even know, God will send you somewhere and you'll pick up somebody, and other folk will wonder why you picked up that baggage. And when that baggage is unwrapped, you'll come to find out it was the treasure inside the baggage that God was going to use to transform you into your purpose. Hold on, I have to sympathize and empathize with the state of Naaman's wife here, because you have to recognize when Naaman came home and laid down in the bed at night when he was going through his internal struggles, she was the one that had to embrace him and stroke his cheek and say, baby, everything's going to be all right. I know you don't see anything but a leopard, but look, I'm willing to touch you despite your bruises. I'm willing to caress you despite your hurt. I'm willing to deal with you despite your reputation of what your real issue is. But guess what? You remember that little girl that you brought to me? She told me about this preacher prophet over in Samaria, that if you would go and talk to him, that he would have the power to heal you. Naaman gets excited because there is the potential and the possibility to be restored, to have a true sense of self. So look what Naaman does. Naaman goes and has a conversation with the king of Aram and said, I've heard about this prophet. I need you to set me up a meeting. And look what the king says. He says, get my pen and my paper and call my servant with my seal. I'm going to send you directly to the king of Israel, and I'm going to tell him to heal you. Naaman gets excited. He doesn't go empty-handed. The Bible says that he brings 750 pounds of silver, 150 pounds of gold, and 10 changes of raiment to carry to the king. He's willing to pay for this level of blessing. But when he gets there, and they go in and tell the king of Israel that is this fellow by the name of Naaman. He walks in boldly to the king and he hands him over a letter, and the king opens up the letter, and to Naaman's dismay, he does not rejoice, but rather he begins to grieve. That's right. What do you do when you feel as though God has set you up? He did not interject in the clause that he was going to just leave you in a place where you feel dropped off and stranded. What do you do when it does not work out the way that you're planning? What do you do when God is sending you like a roller coaster, loop to loops and ups and downs? What do you do when you're standing